Hey everybody, it's Natalie with Treasures of Mini. We're going to make another card today with the Simon Says Stamp February Card Kit stamp set. I am going to make a top folding card. This is a piece of cardstock at 4¼ by 11 and scored at 5½. And this is a piece of Bristol that is 5 by 3¾ I'm going to make a little mark on each side that I can kind of be able to see how much of my card base you're going to be able to see. I needed a little coffee bean, so I got this Lawn Fawn Love You a Latte stamp set, and I'm just going to use this coffee bean to go around the edge of my card base. So I've got some Versamark here, and I'm just going all the way around the edge. That's why I put those little tick marks there, so I knew how much of it you would be able to see. And then I'm going to heat emboss these with some Stampendous copper embossing powder. I'm going to put it all over it, and then I'm going to heat set it. Then we're going to set our card base aside. Now on this Bristol piece, I took the coffee cup from the stamp set and I stamped it 4 times on a piece of sticky Post-it note, and I arranged them on my card base the way that I just kind of wanted them to fall. Then I took the saying from the stamp set that says, I only need 2 things, and I'm just randomly scattering this or stamping this with some Versamark ink all over the card. But it was getting kind of hard to see, so I went on and put some of my embossing powder over it, over what I had already stamped, so that I could see it a little easier. And then I didn't heat set it. I'm just being real careful not to touch it. But now I can see where I have the saying already. So now I'm going to go back in again with some Versamark and stamping that even more. And then I put my embossing powder on it again, and I heat set it. And as you can see, now it's heat set. And now I'm going to use some Distress ink blending. And this is sped up like 4 times, I think. But the colors that I'm using is Abandoned Coral first, and then my middle tone will be Worn Lipstick, and then my lightest color is going to be Spun Sugar. Now, the reason that I'm showing all of this is because I think sometimes we can watch videos and we see people do their Distress ink blending and it's really fast and you kind of get it thought in your mind, or at least I used to be. I would wonder, why does mine not look as good as theirs, as quick as theirs? So I am going to show you the whole process. Now, for the Post-it notes, there are the full adhesive Post-it notes, so the whole part is sticky. But you still want to be careful when you're running your blender tool over it that you don't pull it up, kind of like I just did right there. So just be careful going around that. So I'm just going to keep adding a ton of this Abandoned Coral because I want this to be pretty bright and vibrant. It's a Valentine's Day card and I just want it to be really bright. So I'm just going to keep going down. I won't put it quite as heavy the further down my card I get. My main part for it to be the darkest is right up here at the top edge. Anyway, I don't know. I drew a blank for a minute, and I always have something to say. That was kind of weird for me. Anyway, we're going to go into some Worn Lipstick now, and I'm not starting from the top. I'm going to come in from the sides because I don't want to drag it over my Worn Lipstick. I'm sure that you can. I mean, over my Abandoned Coral. I'm sure that you can, but I just didn't. And I want this to be pretty heavy too. So I'm doing the same process, just dipping it or kind of like smushing it down on my little on my on my mini ink, Distress ink, and rubbing it around on my card. Really good. I'm just going to town here. Now, for the last one, it is the Spun Sugar, and I am just going to flip my card around and start from the bottom over there. Again, try to be real careful not to pull up your masks. And I always save my masks too, by the way. I just put them back in the packaging with my stamps. So I'm just going to get as much as I can of this Spun Sugar on here. And if you'll notice, I'm not actually touching my card. I'm holding my card still by putting my fingers over my mask because we do have this so thick on here that you actually can leave fingerprints on it. So once I've done all that I think that I can do, I decided to see what would happen with a paintbrush. I've seen people using those clarity brushes and I didn't have any, but I just wanted to see what would happen. So this is a cheap Filbert brush. I mean, it's really cheap. If I will try to remember who it's by and put it in the description below. But I'm going to start with the lightest color and work my way up so that I don't have to worry about my paintbrush like getting all mixed in the wrong colors. So I'm just running my paintbrush in it really good and doing a back and forth swooping motion. And sometimes I actually kind of make a circular motion just to keep, if there's any spots that really need blending. And I'm just getting as much ink on here as I could. And I actually did think that when I used the paintbrush, it actually laid down more color than the blender tool did. I think the blender tool, you rub at it so hard that the sponge actually kind of soaks some of the distress ink back up, and the paintbrush didn't do that. So you can, I think if you look real close, you can actually see here that the worn lipstick and the spun sugar are already a pretty good bit darker. And I just keep going back and forth, swooping in a swooping motion. And I'm really loading this paintbrush up too. I'm not, shy with it. And I'm just going to keep going back and forth, again, trying to make sure you don't pull up your masks. And I just keep doing this to where I have almost a flawless blend. And I was really proud of this. I showed this to my husband, and he actually asked me where I bought the paper from. And I don't know, kind of made me pretty proud. I was like, I didn't. I made this paper. So he was pretty impressed too. I'm just going to keep going, and you can do this as dark or as light as you want. But I mean, I think this just shows that you don't have to run out and buy the new end thing. You can just look through your stash and see what you have, what you got at home you can use. So as you can see, it's really, really pretty. So this is a mini Misty stamping tool, and what I did is I took the coffee cup stamp and I just kind of lined it up over one of my masks and closed the door, and it picked up the stamp. And then I pulled my mask off, and with some Versamark ink, I'm going to ink it up and stamp it. And then you will see that I kind of made a mistake. I am covering it with embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set that and repeat the process over and over again. But I forgot to use my anti-powder static tool. So you can see I did get some embossing powder where I didn't want it, but all you have to do is take your paintbrush and just kind of brush it out of the way. Now here is where everything messed up. I thought that I was recording the rest of the process of this card, but I was not. I've been having a lot of technical difficulties with my computer and so on. It is all fixed now, thank goodness, but I still wanted to share this. So what I did, you can see that I used my zigs and watercolored all of the coffee cups, which I'm going to show you how I did. But I also took a heart from the stamp set, and with the abandoned coral, I just kind of stamped it all over in random spots. And also in the Simon Says stamp card kit for February, these little enamel hearts came with it. So I put a few of those on there. And this is not really my favorite card that I've ever done. I really wanted to use a brown to emboss the coffee beans, but I didn't have one. So I used the copper, and I felt like I needed copper in the card somewhere, so I took the little faces from the stamp set as well, and I embossed those in the copper, and then I put glossy accents over the little sleeves. I was trying to just give it more of a cohesive look. If I did this again, I wouldn't do the glossy accents on the sleeves. So to show you guys how I painted this though, I went on and stamped 2 more coffee cups on a piece of Bristol, and that's what you're going to watch me paint. I also wanted to share with you that when I am trying to decide how I want to watercolor with my zigs and what colors will work, I usually stamp out several of the object and I just play with my colors and I write it down. So let's get to painting. Excuse me. So the color of the zigs that I am using, I have written at the top there on the left. And it's basically the same process that I did with my teacups in the video before this. You're wanting to visualize that your highlight is in the front center of the cup. So you can see I put down that lightest color first, and then I spread it around with a damp brush, and then I came in with my darkest and I'm spreading it around. But under the sleeve, it'll cast a little bit of a shadow. So that's why I brought that line all the way across. And then the same for the top, except for what's going to make the shadow at the top is the lid. So after you get done spreading that around and you come in with your darker color, you'll see that I do a fine thin line right under the lid, and that's to show a shadow. And then with a damp brush. Now, if you'll notice when I do the darker color, I don't bring it all the way across. I kind of just work with it on the edges. So now we're moving on to the lid, and the colors that I'm using in the lid are at the top as well. But I'm actually going to bring in the darker brown a lot more because this lid, I had in my mind that it's actually a brown lid from like coffee cups like this that I've seen before. So I really do want a lot of the darker brown. I think if you remember with my teacups, I barely put any of the darker color on and just spread it out. But on this lids, I'm bringing a pretty good bit of it in. You just want to make sure that your lightest spot is kind of right there in the front. And if you'll notice, I'm always wiping off my brush and coming back and wiping off and coming back. It's to keep me from dragging too much of the darker color into my lighter area. So it does take a little practice just to get used to knowing exactly how much water you need on your brush and kind of getting the feel of it. That's why I always stamp a few on some Bristol, and I just kind of play with those before I actually make my card. So you'll see pretty much throughout the whole coffee cup that I'm pretty much doing the same process and just moving the pigment around. And you can always lift up pigment too if you get a little too much. You just use a drier brush and just kind of wipe it across it. I really love watercoloring with the zigs like this. You do have a pretty good bit of control. I really do recommend doing it on Bristol though. Okay, now for the inside of this part of the coffee cup, in my mind, I always remembered seeing them where it's kind of like, that's like sunk in. It kind of like makes an oval in it. So to get that look, I'm just going to use this darker part on the sides and at the top, and with a circular motion I'm just kind of bringing down that pigment a little bit further and further each time, but I'm not bringing it all the way in. And I kind of feel like this one side over here needs a little bit more darkness, so I'm adding a little bit, and again with that circular motion I'm just kind of moving it around. This is going to make it kind of look like that is like an oval, like a concaved oval look. And right here, you'll see I'm actually picking up pigment right there. My brush was really dry, and so I was picking up some pigment. So now I'm just going to show you me coloring one of the sleeves. And when I was coloring these coffee cups, I was kind of, in my mind, I had the idea of those like Valentine's Day little candy hearts. You know, they always come in like the pastel colors and they'll say be mine and all that kind of stuff. That was kind of my thought process with the sleeves of the coffee cups. And I loved this mint green, but the only green that I had up from that was this really dark green. But I really wanted to have the mint color more. So I just put a small amount of the regular green. And in circular motions again, I'm just kind of bringing it out a little bit. And you can see that I'm doing a little bit on one side and then going to the other side, then back and forth. That's because I don't want it to dry there or set on the paper for too long since I went on and put it on both sides. If you were worried about that happening, you could just do one side at a time. I felt like that green was overpowering, so I added a little bit more of that pretty mint colored green. And you can see I push back the darker green to the edges. And here we go. So I used the exact same process to color all of the coffee cups, and here is the finished card. I was not that pleased. I don't think the coffee beans around the edge really do anything great for the card, but I did want to share our distress ink blending and how I watercolored the coffee cups. Please give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe. Until next time, from my craft room to yours, hugs and loves. Bye.